Really? Really? This is what ESPN has decided to waste their money on? Is this why ESPN laid off dozens of people over the summer so they can make room in their budget for this overpriced, polished turd? I don't remember seeing any public demand for this. Matter of fact, I have not heard anything about Bob Griner since she made her immaculate return to the WNBA dump back in May in front of a crowd in Los Angeles that didn't fill the arena to half capacity. The Staples Center or the Crypto Center or the Crypto Arena, whatever the hell they're calling it now. That arena was so quiet that night for the immaculate return of Brittney Griner, you could hear a pair of woodpeckers fornicating in the oak tree. ESPN is responsible for producing some excellent documentaries in the past. A couple of years ago, they produced what I consider to be the best sports documentary of all time, The Last Dance, which followed the NBA career of Michael Jordan, best player in the history of the NBA, and it's not even close. There is not another player that should even be mentioned in the same conversation with Michael Jordan. Well, Casey, what about LeBron James? What about him? LeBron's had an amazing career. He can't touch Michael Jordan. ESPN produced a documentary called The Bad Boys, which highlighted the Detroit Pistons title run in the late 80s and early 90s. Pony Excess, which chronicled the scandals at SMU in the 80s when they were running their program like an NFL franchise. SMU ended up getting crushed by the NCAA. Here we are 40 years later, program has never recovered. And what SMU was doing back then, a lot of it is now considered to be acceptable in college football. OJ Made in America, The U, which followed the University of Miami with Jimmy Johnson and Michael Irvin, the documentary series that ESPN released, I think it was last summer, that followed the career of Derek Jeter. I don't even watch Major League Baseball anymore. I was captivated by that series. I've already rewatched it several times, but you get the point. We might hate what ESPN has become. We might think most of the talent at ESPN is insufferable, but one thing you can't take away from the worldwide leader in woke, they produce excellent documentaries. But here's the thing. All these classic documentaries that ESPN has produced in the past, they all have one thing in common. ESPN chose to focus on legendary athletes or teams that people actually care about. People who don't regularly watch the NBA, they can find interest in a documentary series about Michael Jordan. The entire country was captivated by O.J. Simpson, which is why I was incredibly confused last night and this morning when my inbox was flooded with news about the latest documentary series that ESPN has decided to produce. I'm getting ready to watch my pals last night get absolutely humiliated on national television. I had someone email me earlier telling me that this ball, wherever it is behind me, the ball is deflated. I'm well aware of that. I'm keeping that ball deflated on purpose because it seems like once a week, the Pels come out deflated and flat. Hell, after last night, LeBron James and the Lakers should be deflated. There is no way they could sustain air with how hard the in-game broadcasters at TNT were sucking them like a vacuum. But as I'm watching the game, I noticed a flurry of emails coming into my inbox. Headline at Variety: Disney and Bob Griner strike partnership to tell her story via ESPN and ABC in a scripted series. What? What story? I didn't know Brittney Griner had a story that needed to be told. Seems pretty simple to me. You tried to sneak the skunk into Russia. The Cocker Spaniel sniffed you out at the airport. You spent the next 8, maybe 9 months enjoying the poo-pourri provided by Vladimir Putin. What is so interesting about that? Since this documentary is going to be a scripted series, I'm assuming that ESPN, ABC, they're going to hire actors. If he was still alive, maybe ESPN could have gotten Bob Barker to play the role of Bob Griner. And I guarantee you, this series, it is going to illustrate Brittney Griner in the role of the ultimate victim. With ESPN behind this, I would imagine that mythical racism, it's going to be the focal point of the story. The same mythical racism that allowed Brittney Griner to sell her story to ESPN. Same mythical racism that allowed Brittney Griner to profit what could be millions of dollars by trying to sneak the ganja into Russia. All the while, military veteran Paul Whelan is still rotting away in a Russian jail being forgotten about. Ain't America great? Bob Griner was the leading story this morning on ESPN.com. Bob Griner, not LeBron James, who at 39 years old completely dominated and outplayed a young Pelican squad last night. Not the NFL, not college basketball. Bob Griner was the leading story at ESPN. According to Variety, Bob's wife, Sherelle Griner, she's going to be an executive producer of this series. Now, I looked up Sherelle Griner because I didn't know she had experience producing television. Being married to a dump diver, I figured Sherelle Griner was a professional activist, kind of like Meg Rapinoe. But as it turns out, Sherry G is a lawyer. A lawyer? Since when have lawyers been asked to produce a big budget TV series? Let me translate this for you. Not only did ESPN give Bob Griner loads of money in woke welfare for the rights to her painfully boring story, they're also giving Sherelle Griner a massive salary for producing this series. In other words, Sherelle Griner is a producer in name only. I'm sure ESPN will have to hire a real executive producer to do the actual work. Here on the channel, that's what we call woke welfare. Burke Magnus, he is the president of content at ESPN. He's been working at the worldwide leader in woke for the past 25 years. So I think it's safe to say with 25 years entrenched in the filth, Burt has been 100% infected with the woke fungus. In his statement, where he tried to justify this complete waste of resources, Burt claimed that Brittney Griner was an exceptional athlete. He also said, "I have a feeling the story of Bob Griner will captivate audiences everywhere." What? Captivate audiences everywhere? Let me ask you something. When is the last time the WNBA captivated an audience? Actually, let me rephrase that question. In the last 3 decades, when has the WNBA ever captivated an audience? When Fauci was spreading his potent potables across America, forcing sports leagues to play their games in empty stadiums, empty arenas, the WNBA, they were the only league that wasn't negatively impacted. It was business as usual in the dump. They had been playing games in empty arenas for the last 30 years. The agency that represents Bob Griner, they also found the unique way to collect woke welfare. Bob is such a big star. Bob is such in high demand. A singular agent, they can't handle the workload. Bob Griner has to employ 2 agents. In keeping with tradition, both agents, they were named executive producers of this steaming turd. They also released a statement to the media. BG is a hero across sport, culture, and humanity. BG is a rapper from New Orleans. He made some decent music in the late 90s, early 2000s, but he's not what I would call a hero. He also has nothing to do with this documentary, so I'm not sure why he's being mentioned here. KC, I think they were talking about Bob Griner being a hero. Bob Griner? Hero? Are you out of your fucking mind? What has Bob Griner done that was so heroic? Give me one example. What is so heroic about spending time in prison? There are millions of people in prison in America right now. Most people call them criminals. I guess ESPN calls them heroes. I have never worked in television. I have no experience producing a documentary. But if I was running a network or if I'm pitching a series to a network, I'm going to focus on someone that people actually care about. I'm going to focus on someone that people would be interested in learning more about. I'm going to make sure the focal point of the documentary is based on a star, someone with drawing power. Brittney Griner. She might have been a household name last year, but those 15 minutes of fame expired. Time ran out. This past season, the Phoenix Masculines, they participated in pretend basketball in a half-empty arena. They can't get people to care about Brittney Griner in her home arena. Remember when she returned home last year? There was a church in Houston, I believe it was Woke United Methodist. They organized a welcome home party for Bobby G. Bob was born and raised in Houston, so you would think Her hometown would be eager to see her home. Like games in the WNBA, this event was free of charge. Didn't have to pay for tickets. The only expectation was that you worship your risen queen. If I remember correctly, only 24 people showed up. I would be willing to bet they were all related to Brittney Griner. No one cared. In her hometown, the town she was born and raised in, no one cared to welcome Brittney Griner home. So what makes Disney, what makes ESPN think people are going to watch this garbage? Let me tell you how irrelevant the WNBA dump is. Last night, the semifinals for the NBA in-season tournament was played in Las Vegas, which, by the way, I shit on this idea at the start of the season. I am often critical of Adam Silver, but I do want to give him credit here. The in-season tournament, it was a huge success. Made the beginning of the NBA regular season actually matter. The players were motivated to win. The players bought into it. The fans bought into it. Well, the Pels were bought into it until last night. Taking a young team to Vegas and giving them 2 days off, that is a recipe for disaster. B.I. and Zion were high during their press conference a couple of days ago. The entire team looked like they were hungover last night. It was embarrassing, disappointing. But anyway, we're watching the game last night. My girlfriend tells me that the trash engineers from the Las Vegas dump were in attendance. All the employees, all the Las Vegas anonymous faces, they came to see what real basketball looked like. The NBA is notorious for highlighting celebrities in attendance at their games. Now, they're not overbearing with it. They're not obsessed with celebrities like the NFL was obsessed with Taylor Swiffer. But for decades, the NBA, they'll show celebrities to the TV audience who are at their games. Now, I turned the game off after the third quarter. I couldn't take it anymore. But through the first 3 quarters, and I would imagine that this was the case through the entire game, the NBA, they never showed the dump divers from Las Vegas. Never. Now, to be fair, there was really no reason to show them because they're not celebrities. You guys thought that I was playing when I nicknamed this team the Las Vegas Anonymous Faces? That was not satire, that was reality. These are the back-to-back winners of the Golden Toilet, and they can still work their jobs during the off-season at Publix without being recognized. I'll go ahead and make a prediction here. Actually, I'll make 2 predictions. Number 1, ESPN, they're going to use the based on a true story thing to stretch the truth in this documentary. They are going to paint Bob Griner as the ultimate victim. Wouldn't surprise me if Russia is shown as the oppressor using mythical racism to take advantage of the anti-American victim. Prediction number 2. Ratings for this series, ratings are going to be in the pooper. Maybe the anonymous faces will let Bob Griner borrow the golden toilet to flush the entire series because no one is going to watch this. This will likely air on ABC. They'll be lucky to draw 500,000 viewers. Wouldn't surprise me if the entire series averaged 250,000. People are not interested in this story. Do they not remember the reaction when Brittney Griner came home last year? Most people were pissed off about it. They couldn't believe John Biden exchanged a Rolls-Royce named Victor Boot for a Schwinn with 2 flat tires named Bob Griner. Next year, this could be the leading nominee for the 2024 Huge Embarrassing Failure Awards. But give me your thoughts on this. ESPN, ABC, they announced that they are producing a scripted documentary series on Bob Griner. In a statement to the media, her agents refer to Brittney Griner as a hero. Give me your prediction. Will there be any interest in this series? Does anyone care about the story of Brittney Griner? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate you guys and your continued support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.